Boy, you're coming all the way out here to the crossing. Well, we got a lot of history here. It's an interesting place. It's a healing place. To me it is, anyway. And perhaps by the time you leave, it'll be to you. As the buffalo herds started to shrink, and that's when the camps started evolved, because our people started settling down. We didn't follow the herds around anymore. They started settling down, and in homes similar to this behind us. But they settled down along the riverways, because the riverway was the means of all the transportation was up and down on the rivers because of the forts like Fort Victoria, Fort Edmonton. So people traveled up and down. That was the trade route. When the fur trade was taking place, it was up and down. Canoes, there's scows, there's York boats. So they traveled, moving families, moving furs, moving goods from fort to fort. And in between the areas, the Metis people settled in these little areas. And they're called river lots, and in meaning that they're run down from the river. Everybody had a riverfront, so they had access to the river, and they'd run up to the highland, or a distance. They're not very wide, but people would have these river lots. Families would have them, but that didn't mean that there was boundaries. If somebody needed to live, they'd talk to them, or that's my uncle, and he'd build a house, and was quite a few homes within one river lot. So everybody shared. We were more community minded. Because of the trading posts, that's why, and also because of the river, there was this all open land. Yes, you could travel, but from here, we'll say to Lac La Biche or to other areas, and it would be just traveling overland, and there are no roads them days, nothing. You just travel overland, no trees, no forests. And like I said, the buffalo had made this all prairie, as they used to cycle, feed back and forth, and kept the forest back. But now the forest is here. It's bound to come. The birds bring it, and the animals bring it. But the harvest camps, like I said, gradually evolved. They traded in their ponies that they chased the buffalo with, took them up to a wagon. The carts, the odd cart was still around, but they used wagons because their families were big, and they could use the wagons and haul a little more on them. And they were not so noisy. Those carts get really noisy. And so now when you live in an area like this, when they live along the river like this, there's no animals so much in the area. I mean, poor deer go through, I'm sure he was lunch. And berry picking, well, there wouldn't be not too much. Everybody, the kids would be out picking or any berries. So there wasn't ideal for that. So with the harvesting camp, in the spring, we'll start with the spring one, is the fishing camp. Okay, we'll say we'll go into one of the lakes and whitefish in it. But there's other lakes, they have tolobes, they got pickerel. But we'd head up to the lakes, and that's where they would go to a fishing camp. They'd go there, load everything up. The kids would be 2 kids, or a couple of women, a couple of men, like a mother and a daughter or something, and her husband and her dad. And they would head there. They'd make their own nets. The men would make their own nets. They'd go, load everything, go to a lake, and go do the fishing. Well, this happened throughout the community. They'd go different directions, different lakes, different fish. They do the same thing again, another camp. They'd come home and trade and that, but another camp in the summer would be the berry camp. There again, they'd load up everything again in the wagons, away they'd go. But you didn't go to the lakes, you'd go towards the forest because that's where the berries are. Now, the berries were important. They'd pick, and there they would dry them and then bring them home. Now in the fall was the hunting camps. That's when they would go after moose or elk or whatever game that they decided on. They'd head north again towards the forested area, that's where they would hunt. They dried their meat in the camps and pounded the meat down into a powder, and that's what they would bring home. Each time these camps would bring them home, they would trade with other members because they would have different type of dried meat, from caribou, whatever. But So they trade, the trading went on. See, we have fur trading, and Metis are just traders. They love to trade. Even to this day, they like to trade. When we got their moose meat home powdered and pounded down, we would make what they call pemmican. Pemmicans made with rendered, you heard it in the buffalo camp, it's rendered tallow, which is the fat from the inside the animal, which is very good for you, and also the dried meat and the dried berries were mixed together, make pemmican. But the pemmican was not used just as a trail, it was a trail food, yes, but that was just preserving it. When you're at home or in trail, you'd put a pot of water on, you'd take some pemmican, you'd put it in there, you got vegetables from your garden, or if you're on a trail, you'd pick wild onions or tiger lily bulbs, or even hazel, whatever you want to put into your soup. Then you would add your bannock dough in a bag, and that's what you'd tie into a bag, and you'd put it in there to boil and cook. It's like a pudding in a bag. It's like a bread in a bag. Take that out, and you'd slice it up. It's got a name for it called a puchian. I think it's called Indian pudding. I don't know how the connection is, but it's our carbohydrates. We needed carbohydrates. Everybody could eat it, from the littlest to the oldest. That was a purpose. So pemmican was for preserving and packing it, it made it easy. The dried fish was the same thing. We made chowders. We didn't chew on the dried fish. I mean, that takes more energy. We'd make our chowders with it and make our bannock with it. So there was it was just a way of preserving and packing, like I said, and it's easier to pack dry. It's not going to spoil. And then fresh, you can't pack it fresh. Wintertime, it was trapping time. So when I trapped, when I get to a line, I'm not going to just have time to go hunting. It's wintertime. You take and you want your food, you take it with you. You got everything. You got your pemmican, you got your dried meat. You pack it with you. When you get there, you're trapping first, because this is prime time for the furs. So you get your snare set out for your one day for your squirrels and that. Next day you're out for setting your wolves, your long hair, and your coyotes. The next day you're setting maybe for your beavers, your muskrats. So you got 3 days. Now the fourth day you're back checking yours. Now you're starting to pull your furs in, resetting. You do this 3 days per line. It's getting to be close to Christmas at home. You're going to be home. You're getting your furs piled up. So after about 10 days or so, 2 weeks we'll say, you can go get that moose that's been hanging around in the willow swale. Because it's winter, you got fresh meat for the community to share, to trade, whatever, and fresh meat for home. Then you'd take and load up your sleigh, and because you only got probably dogs with you, and that's it. You're not going to pack too much. You're not going to leave any fur, so you don't stay there and trapping fur, because you can't. You can only pack so much. Head home. Then you go, and folks would go and trade and barter sell their furs at the fort, and purchase other things that they would need for home, or for Christmas time, and they would do this and then go in the spring again, give the animal, the line a rest, and do it again in the spring, so you get different areas in the line. So this cycle would go on, and it didn't. But we had to go way out. We had to travel quite a ways for a lot of these things. So it wasn't easy. Sometimes it's, really cold, or, you had to be careful. So you had to know what you were doing. You had to be knowledgeable of the land. We are the stewards of our land, to me, that's, very important. Fur management, we got children growing up. They got to leave something for them. They got a future generation to leave for. And that's very important, because Métis families were big families. You've got 12, 14 kids, you're not going to go and rape the trap line and nothing for the future. So that was very important. And that was the way of life. And whether it was cold or hot or rainy or whatever, life goes on every day, and it was a struggle sometimes, but it gave us, I don't know, we're very resilient people, very determined.